There are moments when the world doesn't break, it snaps. It was supposed to be a day of nothing. No agents calling. No meetings. No cyber breach reports on his desk. Just silence, greasy takeout, and maybe a rerun of a late-90s detective series he still remembered line for line. Alex Mercer, 44, federal agent turned reluctant single dad, had cleared his schedule for once. Not because he had to, but because his 12-year-old son, Ethan, had asked if they could just hang out for once without work buzzing from every pocket in the house. Alex had agreed. He was in faded jeans, barefoot, wearing a weathered hoodie that still had the Department of Justice logo barely visible on the sleeve. Ethan was sprawled on the couch, snacking on chips and glued to a superhero rerun, his glucose monitor patched gently to his left arm. It was a quiet suburban evening in Fort Worth. A slice of peace. Until the door shook like a battering ram had kissed it. Not a knock. Not even a bang. It was a brutal, primitive thud. Alex's instincts flared like warning sirens inside his skull. 20 years working cybercrime for the feds didn't teach him how to handle home invasions, but 8 years in counterintelligence before that had. He was up before the second blow. Digital zoning enforcement. Open the door. The voice sounded official, but fake official. Scripted. Performed. Ethan froze midship. Alex had already slipped toward the foyer, stepping lightly, every breath measured. He peeked through the side panel of the door, and then it burst inward, wooden splinters raining like shrapnel. The chain lock snapped with a gunshot crack. 3 men stormed in. Black uniforms, navy trim. Badges with the emblem of the Federal Residential Zoning Authority, a fictional agency if Alex had ever seen one. It was government cosplay, stitched from thin air and intimidation. One of them lunged for Ethan, yanking the boy and slamming him into the hallway wall so hard that the thermostat popped loose. Another jammed Alex backward against the end table, knocking over the pizza box and lamp. You violated federal HOA broadband code 11B. One barked, his breath stinking of cheap liquor and cheap power. Unauthorized router installation. You're coming with us. Ethan whimpered, barely standing, his medical case half open on the floor. The bearded intruder kicked it aside without a glance, scattering insulin pins, EpiPens, and monitoring strips like junk mail. You have any idea what you just did? Alex said, low and still, his voice barely rising above the storm in his head. Yeah, Bearded said with a sneer. Saved the neighborhood from code violators like you. They weren't just fake. They were dangerous. They moved with the twitchy recklessness of men who'd done this before, who expected no pushback. But they had picked the wrong damn house. Alex played along for now. He didn't resist. Not yet. Let them think they had control. Let them show their hand. Let them spread. The men didn't just threaten, they ransacked. One disappeared into the hallway, the second started flipping drawers like he had a warrant in his back pocket, and the third hovered by the dining table, rifling through unopened mail. Ethan had escaped down the hallway, barefoot, crying but silent, clutching his glucose bag like a lifeline. That's when something deep inside Alex cracked. Not panic. Not fear. Resolve. The kind of resolve that gets agents through interrogation rooms in Belarus and backdoor tracing ops in Singapore. That quiet, unshakable click in the brain that says, enough. They hadn't touched him. They had touched his son. Alex exhaled once, long and slow. Then he moved. Deliberate. Slow. Measured. He stood up from the couch and said, I'm going to make you an offer. The fake agents turned, confused, mildly amused. You leave now, Alex continued, and no one goes to prison tonight. The man nearest the door spat on the floor and laughed. You serious? Who the hell do you think you are? Alex didn't answer with words. He reached beneath the couch cushion and pulled out a smooth black leather case, one movement, clean and practiced. The badge snapped open under the dim light. Alex Mercer, FBI Cybercrime Division. The room stopped breathing. I've watched your kind crawl through this suburb for weeks, Alex said, stepping forward. You've threatened immigrants, bullied old women, extorted single parents, and now you break into my house, touch my kid, impersonate federal authority. One of them bolted for the door. Didn't get far. A neighbor 2 doors down, a retired Army MP, heard the commotion and shoulder-tackled the man onto his lawn like it was 4th down at the Super Bowl. Another fake reached for his waistband. Alex didn't hesitate. He closed the distance, parried the draw, and slammed his elbow into the man's ribs hard enough to collapse him. He twisted the wrist. The pistol fell with a dull clatter. In seconds, the man was zip-tied, face down, groaning. Ethan reappeared from the hallway, voice shaking, but phone in hand. My dad's FBI, he told 911. 3 guys just broke in. He's got them. Send real units. Sirens were wailing within 4 minutes. Red and blue lights painted the living room walls like a crime scene canvas. Officers swept the house. Real ones this time. Alex stood on the porch in torn clothes, hands calm, badge in plain view. Behind him, 2 criminals zip-tied, crying like boys caught stealing candy. He handed over names, histories, previous cons warrants, everything. They had stumbled into a trap disguised as a house. The air in the federal courtroom felt different than any interrogation room Alex Mercer had ever stepped into. Here, there were no two-way mirrors, no flickering desk lamps. Just a solemn, cavernous chamber where the echoes of gavel strikes still lived in the wood grain. And today, it was filled to the brim. News vans clogged the streets outside. Inside, every bench was occupied, reporters scribbling, local homeowners whispering, a few victims from neighboring communities staring forward with clenched jaws and watery eyes. The defendants, once cocksure and smug in their fake uniforms, now sat in pressed suits that hung too loose on their frames, as though shame had shrunk them. Alex didn't look at them. He sat at the front, his suit simple, unadorned. No ribbons, no medals, just the quiet, heavy presence of a man who'd seen too much to ever need applause. Beside him, Ethan fidgeted with the sleeves of his dress shirt. The cuffs were too tight. He didn't complain. He didn't look around. His father's hand rested on his arm, and that was enough. The prosecutor stood tall, her voice ringing with precision as she addressed the court. Your Honor, these men invaded homes under false authority. They impersonated government officers. They extorted cash. They violated civil rights. But most of all, they used fear as a weapon. And had they not kicked in the door of an actual federal agent, they would still be out there, still terrorizing. She turned and nodded at Alex. It is because of Agent Mercer's composure and tactical restraint that we are here today with not just suspects, but charges. 7 of them, to be exact. Armed home invasion, assault of a minor, impersonating a federal officer, wire fraud, possession of unauthorized weapons, tampering with medical equipment, conspiracy to commit extortion. The judge allowed the courtroom to break into light applause. Not protocol, but no one stopped it. Alex sat motionless. He wasn't here for the clapping. He was here for the conviction. The defense tried to play its card midway through the trial. Predictable. They argued that Alex, though a federal agent, had acted as a civilian, that he used excessive force, that the attackers hadn't drawn their weapons, that perhaps Alex had escalated unnecessarily. The lawyer's words stank of desperation. But before the prosecutor could object, the judge leaned forward, his voice as cold and precise as a scalpel. Counselor, stop right there. This court recognizes Agent Mercer as an active federal law enforcement officer, trained in crisis protocol. This was not a domestic dispute. This was an organized criminal operation. His response was appropriate, necessary, and restrained. That was the moment the tide shifted completely. The prosecution then did what Alex hoped they would. They opened the floor to the community. An elderly woman, voice trembling but eyes fierce, described how the imposters threatened to tow her car unless she paid them $500. A young mother recalled being forced to hand over cash to avoid a fake child noise violation. A Vietnamese immigrant, fluent in English but shaken to her core, told the courtroom how the men threatened to call immigration if she didn't comply. Despite her being born in California. Story after story. Pain layered with fear. Shame layered with confusion. All with the same culprits. The same tactics. The same phantom agency. Alex watched them speak, one by one. And each time, Ethan squeezed his hand under the table. By the time the closing arguments wrapped, the defense didn't even pretend anymore. Their clients sat pale, sweating, heads down. It took the jury 6 hours. The sentence was read out loud. And it felt like steel. 32 years. No parole. No deals. Split evenly between the 3. When it was over, and the courtroom emptied like a draining tide, a bailiff handed Alex a folded note. Scrawled handwriting on lined paper. No signature. You didn't just catch us. You stopped what was supposed to be the future of robbery. Alex crushed the note in his hand and dropped it in the trash. That night, there were no interviews. No victory speeches. He didn't return the calls from cable anchors or political advocates. He went home. The house still smelled like takeout an old carpet cleaner. The reinforced door gleamed faintly in the porch light. Ethan was already curled up on the couch, legs tucked under a blanket, remote in hand. Alex dropped down beside him with a long exhale. They sat in silence. Then Ethan, eyes still on the flickering screen, spoke. "I know you didn't want anyone to see all that, but I'm glad they did." Alex looked at him, really looked. The kid was no longer pale, no longer shaking. He was present, whole, alive. "So am I," Alex whispered. For a man who spent most of his career digging through digital mazes and untangling encrypted lies, Alex Mercer had never imagined he'd become a symbol for something so analog, so raw. But the story wouldn't stop growing. Within a week of the trial, it had metastasized beyond local news. It wasn't just a home invasion gone wrong anymore. It was a national warning flare, a wildfire. Someone at the DOJ referred to it as the HOA grift scheme, but that wasn't even close to what it really was. This wasn't about fake zoning fines or fraudulent noise violations. It was a blueprint for fear, an engineered network of intimidation, fueled by made-up agencies, thrift store uniforms, and a twisted understanding of how little ordinary people knew about the law. And now, that blueprint was exposed. It started small. A Reddit post from someone in Arizona. "I think the same guys hit my grandma's house." Then another, and another. Soon, community forums lit up across the country with eerily similar stories. Elderly homeowners threatened into paying fake grass height citations. Families warned about fabricated, wireless interference codes. Even a deaf couple in Portland bullied into letting strangers inspect their security system. The stories poured in. Dozens. Then hundreds. Each one its own variation of the same virus. The Department of Justice responded fast. Faster than Alex expected. Within 2 weeks, he was summoned back to D.C. Not for disciplinary review, but for leadership. They wanted him to head the task force. His case had cracked the pattern. He had the training, the knowledge, and now the face. The quiet man on the porch who stopped a scam ring with zip ties and federal resolve. Alex didn't want the attention, but he wanted justice. And this time, it wasn't just about his family. It was about the nation's most vulnerable being hunted by weaponized bureaucracy wrapped in knockoff uniforms. He agreed, on one condition. "I stay based in Fort Worth," he told the brass. "This started here, and there are still victims who think it ended here." They agreed. Back at home, the air was changing. Not just in the news, but in his own house. Ethan, once anxious to walk past the busted front door, was starting to speak louder. Laugh more. Play music again. But then came the backlash, subtle, but sharp. Whispers at school. Rumors that his dad beat people up for fun. Kids joking that Ethan was under surveillance 24/7. One boy had even drawn a picture of Ethan in handcuffs as a joke. It didn't take long for Ethan to come home red-eyed, fists clenched, backpack abandoned at the door. Alex was halfway through paperwork when he heard the thud of something thrown against the wall. He walked out to find Ethan standing stiff in the hallway, jaw locked. "They think I'm dangerous, because of you." Alex didn't flinch. He let the boy breathe. "You're not dangerous," Alex said finally. "You're just awake." Ethan blinked. "They don't know what it's like to have to freeze while your dad gets shoved into a couch. They don't know what it's like to watch someone dump your meds like trash. But you do. You're not dangerous, Ethan. You're aware. And trust me, that's more powerful." Ethan didn't say anything. But that night, Alex found a note taped to the fridge. "You can train people to fight, but you can't train them to stay calm. You did both. I'm proud of you. I want to learn." Alex didn't cry. He didn't smile. He just kept the note in his wallet, right behind his badge. Meanwhile, the task force gained traction. They discovered 2 more major cells, one operating out of the Midwest, the other based in the Carolinas. Both had borrowed playbooks eerily similar to what had happened in Fort Worth. Same scripts. Same counterfeit badges. Different names. Residential Digital Protection Council, Community Infrastructure Inspection Agency. All fake. All terrifyingly effective. They had preyed on the fearful, the elderly, the undocumented. Now they were being hunted back. Alex coordinated raids in 3 states without leaving his living room. With encrypted channels and virtual coordination, he helped agents decode paper trails, fake domains, burner phones, tracking these criminals down with the same tools they used to deceive. And each time, he circled the name back to the original 3. The trio who kicked in his door. Their scam had inspired a wave of copycats. But without them, the entire tree withered. They weren't just criminals. They were trendsetters in terror. One night, just as Alex was about to shut his laptop, an encrypted message pinged his screen. From undisclosed. Subject, it's not over. You broke the ring, but not the mold. He stared at it for a long time, then archived it, then opened a folder titled Emergent Threats, Suburban Authority Frauds. He began typing. The knock came at 11:42 p.m. Not loud, not urgent, just unexpected. Alex froze, hand instinctively reaching for the weapon he now kept just out of reach but always in mind. He moved to the door slowly, peering through the peephole. It wasn't a stranger. It was a woman, late 30s, hood up, standing still. He opened it cautiously, one foot bracing the frame. She didn't flinch. I saw you on the news, she said softly. I think they got my mom. Alex stepped back. Come in. She didn't look like someone who'd show up at a federal agent's doorstep in the middle of the night. No makeup. No fear in her posture, either. Just steady eyes under the hood of a gray windbreaker, one hand clutching a USB drive, the other still balled into a shaking fist she hadn't noticed. Alex Mercer stepped aside. Come in, he said again, more softly this time. The woman hesitated just long enough to scan the living room, then entered. She moved like someone who had rehearsed this moment. Every step, every word, over and over until the fear dulled into purpose. My name's Angela Cross, she said, voice raspy from exhaustion. My mom lived in the Green Hollow retirement community. At least she did until 3 weeks ago. Alex waited. Angela reached into her coat and pulled out a thick folder wrapped in a rubber band and a tiny black flash drive. She placed them both gently on the coffee table between them. I think she was conned. Threatened. She started making weird payments, cash withdrawals, like she was buying off someone. I asked her why. She said neighborhood safety dues. But Green Hollow doesn't even have an HOA. Alex's eyes narrowed. And then, she had a stroke. During a so-called compliance check, 3 men came to the door, said they needed to check her emergency alarm wiring. She let them in. I don't know what happened next, but when I got there, she was unconscious. They were gone. EMTs said it wasn't triggered right away. Someone unplugged her system. Alex felt the shift in the room, the subtle tilt from suspicion to certainty. This wasn't an isolated event. This was connected. Angela slid the drive forward. I pulled security footage. My mom's door cam stores off-site. One of the men was the same guy from your case. Tattoo on the neck. He's still out there. Alex plugged the drive into his laptop. And there he was. Tattooed, hooded, walking up to the porch like he belonged there. One of the trio that broke into Alex's house. The runner. The only one who had escaped serious time thanks to a plea deal and a lack of physical evidence. Now he was back, operating under a new alias. A new badge. A new scam. Alex sat back, eyes burning. This wasn't just a cleanup job anymore. It was a reckoning. The next morning, Alex went to war. Not with weapons. With warrants. By 8 a.m., Angela was sitting across from 3 agents in a secured briefing room while Alex stood at the whiteboard, mapping connections between Green Hollow, Fort Worth, Amarillo, and 3 other suburban zones, all reporting similar tactics. Digital door cams. Masked IDs. Disconnected phone lines. Always cash demands. Always fake compliance citations. The name Land Safe Property Syndicate kept surfacing, an old, supposedly dissolved real estate investment group that had once been fined for predatory lease schemes and unregulated private patrol contracts. It had gone dark 6 years earlier after a civil suit, then vanished. But now? Now it looked like Land Safe had a new face. A decentralized scam that franchised its fear. No more offices. Just fake uniforms and desperate men. Angela's story gave them the lead. Alex's team tracked the runner, real name, Derek Neck Braylow, to a suburban property just outside Lubbock, where he'd been posing as a security consultant. He was using a new identity, hosting safety audits for elderly tenants, and collecting untraceable fees via gift cards and Venmo aliases. The trap was set in 3 days. Derek was taken down without incident, cuffed on a porch in full regalia while 3 hidden cameras recorded everything. Angela was offered a front-row seat to the arrest. She declined. I just want my mom safe, she said, standing beside Alex on the grass. I don't need closure. I need accountability. Meanwhile, Ethan was fighting his own quiet war. After weeks of whispered jokes and taunts at school, he'd had enough. His decision came not with a blowout or tears, but with a flyer. He printed 40 of them, titled, What to Do If Someone Pretends to Be Authority at Your Door. Each one was clean, calm, and terrifying in its truth. He passed them out at lunch, taped one to his locker, asked the school newspaper to print it. The principal called Alex in, unsure whether to scold or applaud. "He's making students nervous," she said, eyebrows tight. "We've had 3 parents call already." Alex asked for the flyers back. The principal handed them over. Alex smiled. "Good. Then it's working." Ethan didn't say much that night, but Alex found one of the flyers pinned above his desk, under a headline he'd written himself. "Never again. Not here." By month's end, Alex's team had linked the LandSafe group to 17 fraudulent operations across 6 states. Nearly 60 victims, half of them elderly, a quarter undocumented, all of them manipulated through the illusion of power and protocol. And in every case, the origin led back to that same blueprint, that same quiet evil. But something had changed. Communities were fighting back. Neighborhoods began hosting seminars. Parents held safety briefings. Retired military offered to volunteer in watch patrols. School newsletters published resources. City councils launched investigations. The fear was fading, because people had seen what courage looked like in jeans and a torn t-shirt, standing in a doorway with nothing but his badge and his will. They'd seen justice done quietly, but thoroughly. Then, one morning, another knock. This one soft. Familiar. Ethan answered it. A delivery box sat on the porch. No name. No note. Just a single laminated card taped to the front. "We see you. And we're done hiding." Inside the box was a bundle of fake HOA badges. All shredded. Every last one. Sometimes, justice isn't loud. Sometimes, it doesn't arrive in the wail of sirens or the bang of a gavel. Sometimes, it whispers first, then strikes. That whisper came in the form of a midnight ping, an alert from one of Alex Mercer's surveillance protocols, a low-level tripwire buried in an old communication channel tied to the LandSafe syndicate. A flagged keyword. Mercer. It had come from a message board on the dark web. The thread was simple. Target still active. Precautions advised. Mercer must be neutralized. For a moment, Alex just stared at the screen, unmoving. Not in fear, but recognition. They were still out there. He had burned their roots, but not their seeds. 2 days later, it happened. He was leaving a briefing at the local field office, dusk settling over the horizon in long orange streaks. The parking lot was mostly empty, wind rustling the loose gravel as he crossed toward his car. He saw the man too late. The attacker came from the blind side, fast and trained. Not a thug. Not some desperate copycat. This was someone who'd done drills. Alex pivoted at the last second, the knife grazing his shoulder instead of his ribs. He dropped, rolled, disarmed, and reversed in seconds, a dance he hadn't had to perform in years but one his body still remembered. They struggled in silence. No shouts. No calls for help. Just breath. Impact. Instinct. And then Alex had him pinned to the asphalt, bleeding from a shattered nose, wrist locked. The attacker didn't speak. Not until Alex removed the mask. Then he smiled, gaps in his teeth, hate in his eyes. "We're not done." At the station, the man finally spoke under interrogation. His name was Vince Carlo, ex-private contractor out of Nevada, dishonorably discharged from a security firm accused of operating gray zone enforcement in gated communities. No charges had stuck. Until now. Carlo didn't ask for a lawyer. He didn't need one. He had come not to escape, but to send a message. "You think you've shut it down? Mercer, you've just scattered the hive. And now they know your face. They know your family. What happens when the next one doesn't miss?" Alex didn't respond. He didn't blink. He just stood, slowly, and left the room. That night, Alex sat in Ethan's room, watching his son sleep. Peaceful, at last. No nightmares. No tears. Just the slow, steady rise and fall of a chest that hadn't yet been hardened by the world. He turned to go, but Ethan stirred. "Was it them?" the boy asked groggily. Alex sat beside him, nodding once. "It was one of them." Ethan rubbed his eyes. "Are they gonna stop?" Alex looked at the ceiling for a long time before answering. "No, but we'll make sure they don't win." Meanwhile, Angela Cross had found her voice. She had stayed quiet for weeks, but the day after the attack, she went public. In a televised interview with local news, she shared her mother's story, how the fake agents had disabled her emergency alert, left her unconscious, and disappeared without a trace. Then she named names. Not just the known perpetrators, but the LLCs behind them. The shell companies. The post office boxes. The payment apps. The system behind the faces. Angela didn't speak with rage. She spoke with clarity. They build a business on fear, on confusion, on people not knowing who's real and who isn't. Well, now they know. And I'm not afraid anymore. Her clip went viral. Within 72 hours, Angela was invited to speak at a federal community protection conference. She accepted, but not before visiting Alex. They stood on the back porch as the sun rose behind them. "You pulled me into this," she said. "Now I want in." Alex raised an eyebrow. "You want in on the task force?" Angela smiled. "I don't just want in. I want to build something better, safer, for people like my mom, like Ethan, like all the folks who'll never open their door the same way again." He extended a hand. She took it. In the weeks that followed, the community surged with a kind of quiet rebellion. Flyers about fake authority scams were stapled to utility poles. Kids at Ethan's school designed a public service video. A retired judge donated office space to help victims file civil claims. And on one Saturday morning, something extraordinary happened. The neighborhood that once feared knockoffs and fakes came together physically. A block party. No agenda. No politicians. Just neighbors. Families brought food. Kids painted signs. Someone rolled out an old projector and played the footage from Angela's TV interview. Alex and Ethan stood near the grill, plates in hand, watching it unfold. "Do you think it's really over?" Ethan asked. Alex didn't answer right away. Then, softly, "No, but they're running now. And that's a start." The final twist came not with a bang, but a whisper. A package arrived at the DOJ field office, unmarked. Inside, a binder full of internal documents, names, dates, blueprints of the syndicate's operations from 2 years back. Real signatures. Real contacts. And one sticky note, scrawled in messy pen. "I want out. This is my exit. Use it well." No sender. But Alex knew what it meant. Someone from the inside had flipped. It ended not with arrests or headlines, but with paperwork. And that was exactly how Alex Mercer wanted it. The binder arrived quietly. No return address. No explanation. But what it contained was everything. Internal memos. Meeting notes. Names of enforcers scattered across state lines. Payment schedules disguised as maintenance invoices. A full list of shell corporations connected to the LandSafe Syndicate's rebranding efforts. There were even scanned contracts, signed with aliases tied to fake federal entities. One page stood out. A diagram of a proposed nationwide model. A franchise blueprint to replicate the HOA scam in every suburban community across the U.S. They hadn't just been criminals. They were building a future empire of fear. But someone on the inside had decided enough was enough. Alex spent 3 days cross-referencing every line, every signature, every timestamp. It checked out. All of it. And so, the takedown began. Quietly. Efficiently. With federal subpoenas, grand jury hearings, and a sweep of silent arrests in 5 different states. There were no press conferences, no photo ops, just agents walking suspects out of back doors in handcuffs, shutting down accounts, freezing assets, and stripping the machinery down piece by piece. What began with a shattered front door and a terrified child ended with a federal operation so clean, so thorough, that within 6 weeks, there was no trace of LandSafe left in the system. The final case report was 217 pages long. Alex signed his name on the last page with steady hands, then closed the file. Meanwhile, Angela Cross kept her promise. She launched the Neighborhood Defense Initiative, a nonprofit organization that partnered with local governments, police departments, and community centers to teach civilians how to identify and respond to fake authority scams. Her first seminar had 20 people. By the 3rd month, they had trained over 10,000. She became a fixture on community bulletins, featured in articles titled "The Woman Who Fought Back" and "Not Your HOA Victim." But none of it changed her. Angela still drove her mother to appointments, still worked her day job in IT, still answered every call from someone afraid to open their front door. She wasn't looking for fame. She was building protection, one neighborhood at a time. Ethan, now 14, received a letter he didn't expect. It came from the Office of Civic Recognition, an obscure but powerful branch that rarely handed out awards, and almost never to kids. It was short. "In recognition of your courage, awareness, and dedication to community safety in the face of intimidation, we are honored to present you with the National Youth Civil Integrity Medal." The ceremony was small, private, just a room in a federal building. A few officials, a flag in the corner, But when Ethan stood to accept the award, wearing the same shirt he'd worn on the day of the break-in, the room fell completely silent. Alex sat in the front row, pride too big for his chest. And for once, Ethan didn't flinch when the cameras flashed. He stood tall, spoke clearly. This isn't about being brave. It's about not letting anyone use fear like a weapon. Afterward, they went home. The same house. Reinforced doors. New locks. Same old couch. Alex made pizza. Ethan fell asleep on the rug with the dog. The TV hummed quietly. Angela stopped by with coffee and a folder. Updates from the initiative. A new case brewing in Illinois. Another retired HOA enforcer trying to start up again under a new name. Alex smiled. Let me guess. He has a badge that says Neighborhood Standards Task Force. Angela nodded. And a website built in Microsoft Word. They laughed. But beneath the humor, there was a current, an understanding. The work wasn't done. Not really. There would always be another fraud. Another fearmonger hiding behind an acronym. Another man in a cheap uniform knocking on the wrong door. But now people knew better. They knew what to ask, what to report, when to say no. Because one man didn't flinch. One woman didn't stay silent. One kid refused to shrink. Weeks later, on a still Texas evening, Alex sat on his porch watching the sun melt behind the rooftops. The neighborhood was quiet, not silent with dread like before, but peacefully still. And then, another knock at the door. He opened it without hesitation. It was a young couple, new to the neighborhood, holding a casserole and a handwritten card. We heard what happened, the man said. We just wanted to say thank you. Alex blinked, nodded, and invited them in. Ethan called from the kitchen. Are we having guests? Alex smiled. Looks like it. Because sometimes justice isn't just about punishment. Sometimes it's about restoring the place you call home. And this time, it had arrived not with a badge or a gun, but with a neighbor, a casserole, and peace.